Hello everyone, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing another lead code. Yesterday we attempted the count of matches in a tournament, and we didn't really finish it on stream, but I did manage to find, well, I mean, we found an answer, but the solutions that I was working on weren't really working. So I took some time after the video to take a look at my solution and see if I could come up with an answer. And if you wanted to check out the answer, you can look for the video. I will link it somewhere in the description or on your display, and you can go check and see what my solution is like on my GitHub after this video. So let's start out with today's problem. Similar to before, I'm going to hit algorithms. Difficulty is going to be set to easy. Status is to be done, so I'm going to set that to do, and I'm going to skip over the first few ones since I've already seen them before. And I think we are here at design and ordered stream. Okay, I think this is not the one that I was looking to solve today. Keep in mind, I haven't really solved any of these before, but I am trying to stay within within the range of things that I currently am able to take care of. And we'll go from there. Okay, so this is another company's question, and it's for us to delete the greatest value in each row. And we are given an m by n matrix consisting of positive integers. Perform the following operation until grid becomes empty. So we will delete the element with the greatest value from each row, and then if multiple such elements exist, delete any of them. Multiple such elements exist. Okay? Figure out what that means in a moment. And then it says here, add the maximum of deleted elements to the answer. Okay. And so note that the number of columns decreases by 1 after each operation. Okay, so the number of columns, yeah. And then return the answer after performing the operations described above. Okay, so we're first taking a look at each row. So we have rows, and we will be deleting stuff. Bless me, thank me. All right, so we have an input grid of 1, 2, and 4, 3, 3, and 1, right? So they are nested arrays. So an array within an array. And our output here is 8. So the diagram above shows us how we got to this value. In the first iteration, we remove 4 from the first row and 3 from the second row. And notice there are 2 cells with the value of 3, and we can remove any of them. Okay? We add 4 to the answer. Okay? In the second operation, we remove 2 from the first row and 3 from the second row. And we add 3 to the answer. Okay? In the third operation, we remove 1 from the first row and 1 from the second row, and we add 1 to the answer. And the final answer is 4 plus 3 plus 1 is 8. Grid is 10. There are no columns or rows. Output is 10. So I guess we can also get a nested array with 1 element in it. And the diagram above shows the removed values in each step. In the first operation, we remove 10 from the first row and we add 10. And since it's only 1 step, the answer is 10. And m will be the grid length. N is the element length. So the grid length here is 2. And the element length is 3, if I understand that correctly. Right? And then 1 is less than or equal to m, and n is less than or equal to 50. And n was the... okay, so we can have elements up to a length of 50. And grid ij is less than or equal to 100. Sounds good. So let's see what we should do. I think a good way for us to start this question is to take a look at the explanation here and try to build a problem out of it. So we have our grid. We need to first determine oh, this kind of seems like it's going to be a little loopy because we might have to use loops. So since we are returning a value, I'm just going to be using a counter, right? For the time being. So we're going to start with something, call it a count, right? Then we need to start iterating over our whole grid, right? So we need to go over the entire length of the grid, not grind, grid length, and then we'll we'll iterate once. But then not only do we need to in here, what I will do is I will need to store the maximum value of each row, right? So our rows, is it only 2 rows? So 1, 2, and 4. Okay, so this is 1 row and this is another row. And so the number of rows, the total number of rows is n. Okay. Total n. Okay. Anyways, let's create a new matrix to store our values here. So we'll say let temp, which is going to be an array of numbers, right, equal to just an empty array for the time being, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to iterate out over each row, get the maximum number, put it into our temporary array, and then add that to count. And then continue iterating over and over and over again. So we will need another loop. So we'll say let j equal to 0. J is less than what? Grid j dot length, and then j plus plus. I believe. And is that correct? So when we are in our first row, I need j to iterate over grid I dot length, not grid j dot length, because when it's I is 0, this is I is 0, and then when j is 0, this is j is 0. When j is 1, but I is 0, we're still in the same element, but now we've iterated over to the number 2. And when I is 0 and j is 2, we are at 4. Okay, so this is going to be grid I dot length, okay? And j plus plus, because what I'm going to do is this outer loop will do this. Iterate over the whole grid, right? And then this loop will be iterate over the individual rows, okay? Create a placeholder array to compare each row, each row's max value. And that should help us try and understand a little bit better. So now that we have this, let max equal, and this is going to be a number, right? So we're just going to be looking for the max value. Math.max, the spread of grid I, right? And then we're going to temp.push max, right? Sorry, this needs to go into my array. Okay, so what's happening here? The spread operator allows us to go over the whole array, right? Because grid I indicates this whole thing right here. So how do we then if we know that grid I represents a whole array, how do we try to find the maximum value in an array? And that's where the spread operator comes in. And so we're assigning it to the value, and then once you've assigned it to the value, it gets pushed into temp, right? It will do that over and over and over again. And then might have to put the temporary row outside. Why do I want to do that? Well, hold on. Let's see. If we are in let j equal to 0 and grid I is less than, yeah, it will find the max and then it will push it into here. Then we go into our next step. So now I is 1, right? I is 1. We're at 3, 3, 1. What do we do? Well, so we'll need to do one more step where it's like, it doesn't matter if the array gets reset, because what we will do is we will be adding to count the maximum number, right, of temp. So we're gonna have to do another spread array, right? Because when we do 4 and 3, so let's assume our first go is 4 and 3 in here, right? Then it will check the 2 and it will pass through the number that is the largest. But then I need to remove those numbers, right? Temp.pushMax is the first one, and then I need to remove it. So we'll do temp.pop max as well. Expected 0 arguments, but got 1. I don't want that. I want... No, not pop. Is it slice or splice? If I want to remove one element from the array, we'll say splice where at in our current location, and for what? 1, right? The start is where we are, and we want to delete 1, right? And it should return a number. And then we'll return count, because that should be the number that we return. But let's see. I think this line might cause us an issue. So we'll say remove the largest element in the row. But the thing is, what's this number here? If j is 0, I don't want to splice where this is at. I want to splice where max is at, right? And what am I supposed to do here? So temp.splice, if I want to splice where I am at currently, the maximum value, right? We'll just say max and 1. Well, let's try that. Expected 8, got 7. Okay. Let's try this. Console.log. So let's figure out where we went wrong. We have 7 here and 8 here. Console.log will do temp and count here and see where we went wrong. Four, 4, 4, 4, 3, 3, 3, 3, 4 and 7. Oh, so maybe I don't need to. Maybe I don't need the second array. Well, let's do this and this, just for the time being. See what comes up with. 4, 3, and it's 7, and it's expected 8. I see. So my secondary loop is the issue here. Okay, so let's go over our secondary loop. So in here, we want it to start iterating inside of here. So what happens when we are inside of here? Max is equal to the spread of this, right? What we can do is this. We can do let max is equal to 0, 0 outside, and then max, we can reassign it then. Let max equal to 0 outside? No, inside, because we want to reset it each time, right? So if we want to reset it each time, we put it in our first loop. So we'll say max is a number equal to 0, and then instead of declaring this here, we can say this: max is equal to math.max of max, comma, grid j, grid ij, right? Oop, not if, but grid ij. One, two, four. Oh, I see. So if we do that, then we might want to take these outside. I see. Okay. So we'll put our placeholder outside and see how that reacts. Oh, this is going to give us an error because I don't know how to use LeetCode. So if I don't know how to use LeetCode, '81, 33, 162, output was 162, but we expected it to be 98, which it isn't this. Okay. So with our current setup, let's see how do we get this going. Let's try this run first and see how it starts instead of, okay. So 4 here, 4 and 3, 8, it works. Why am I splicing temp? I don't want to splice temp. What do I want to remove? I want to remove the internal number, right? And if I want to remove the internal number, so it is grid ij is the one that I want to remove. So grid ij is the one that I want to remove. Dot splice max I and 1 does not exist on a number. Oh. Let's see how this comes back with grid. Because I want to see it just reduce, reduce, reduce. Okay, so it's not doing what I want it to do. I don't want it to return a new array, so I want it to manipulate the current array. So the slice is not working. No, it would have to be grid I. And then what am I trying to remove? So remove an element from an array JavaScript, right? This is removing the first one. Splice with 2 and 1 returns an array, right? So what does this return? It returns C and D. Okay. All right, I can just filter it instead. Dot filter for the element that does not equal max. Let's see. Can I reassign it? Yeah, I can. And then if I want to do it for each and every one of them, I think I need to do this here, in here. Run this, we'll see. Because I here 2 and 2, 3 and 3, no. Okay, so that was backwards. I went backwards with that. So why is grid I? So it does it on the first one. How do I get it to do it on the second one? So this is now when I is 2, right? When I is 1. So when I is 1, why do you not filter? Oh. Okay. Four, 1 and 2, 1 and 1, 3 and 3. Okay, so this filter doesn't work when it is when it is repeating numbers. Hmm. Okay, so we'll do this. Dot splice, and we'll do it from 0 up until max, right? Comma, grid I, dot splice, max, until max plus 1, up until grid I dot length minus 1, since it's a 0 index. So let's try and see what happens here. Hmm. Up until max, so we'll do max from grid I max, right? I think it has to be grid IJ. Yeah, so it removes the first one, 0 up until max, and all the way up until the end. So how would I then... I need to be able to remove these elements. So how am I removing the element? Let's stop for a moment, rewind, and try to see where we want to go from here. Right? So we have to iterate over everything and remove the maximum. Find what that maximum is. Remove the maximum from each row. Find the maximum of those maximums, and then add it to a temporary. Run it again. Find the maximum of those maximums, add it to a temporary. Run it again, so on and so forth. Right? So if we are going to do the maximum, we're so close. We're so close. But it doesn't work because the logic is wrong. The first time, return a new array with an element removed in the center, and say JavaScript. And we'll try to figure out how to do that. First element from an array minus, and return the array minus the first element. This might be able to alert my array. Shift, yeah, okay, that's fine. And return only the remaining elements. Right? Filter, you don't want in the resulting array, right? Here's the, let's say I want to remove the element in the third index, so compare the index and the filter function callback with the index and the element, right? So we want to remove the second one. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Data index does not remove, and then console.log results with splice. Splice might work for the first one. Parse object dot find index and 1. Parse object dot splice. So this is the array dot splice. The way that I had it, the index of this and then 1. Okay. So the index of grid I max and then 1. And let's see here. Hi, buddy. Still not the one that's still not what I'm looking for. From 0 down to grid I max. comma. I'm no longer going to be able to type now because my cat is in the way. So excuse my inability to type. And this is going to be grid of I dot length, right? And I think this is start here and then delete count. Oh, instead of splice, maybe we'll just use a slice. Because it will return a new array. I don't want it to return a new array. 1, 3, 3, 1. Why can I not remember my array methods? Moves only the third element and modifies the original array in place. Array.splice, index to remove, and then 1. Right? So why am I not seeing 1, 2, 4, 5? I just want to remove 3, right? So if I just want to remove the current thing, it's the index to remove, which is grid ij. No, grid I max is what? I see. Grid I max. So if max was 2, it would remove this the third index. So it would remove like if it was 4, right? This would be grid I of 4. I don't want it to be a 4. So if I want it to be the third element, I need max to be what? Index of grid dot index of, and it is max. So it's the removal of the maximums that is catching me, that is tripping me up right now. Hi, buddy. I'm gonna need you to move because I can't have you in front of my computer right now while I'm trying to solve this. Thank you. So let's see. Let's get rid of all of this because this is where I'm missing. This is where I'm messed up. So we've started our iteration. We've stepped into this first array, right? After we've stepped into the first array, I need to find the maximum. So math.max, the maximum and the current number. So if it was the first one, it is 0 or 1, 2 or 1, or 4 and 1, right? And then max is now written as 4. I want to remove that number. So once that number has been completed, I need to remove it from this index right here. So grid I index of max, right? Dot splice. Oops. Grid I dot index of max, and what were we splicing? We're going to splice where it is, right? In the current element that we are currently looking. So if we are in here, I needed to remove what do I need it to remove? Something of max. Grid I index of max. So grid ij, right? So this becomes grid ij is what's happening here, because it's grid 0, and then let's say this is index of max. Right? Grid I dot index of max. What is that? Grid I, so grid of 0, right? Yeah. Dot index of max, and we're going to splice it. Where? Here. And then for 1. Splice does not work on a type of number. So maybe I don't need to step into this. Because grid of I needed to run this array method on an array. Dot index of max and 1. So that's console log. Console log grid and count. And count is what? The math.max of the spread of oh, I haven't put my thing into temp yet. Right, because I haven't pushed it anywhere for me to figure it out. I haven't done my calculations either. So I'm figuring out what the maximum is. I want to push my maximum into this array here. So do I want to clear the array each and every time? I do want to clear the array each and every time, right? The only thing that I am not changing will be the counter, so that can stay outside of my loops. So if I'm doing my temporary each and every time, right, and I found my max, if I set I equal to 0, what's happening then? That will reset everything. So I'll say if grid ij.length is greater than 0, right? As long as this is working, this should give me an issue. This should give me something to work with. What am I looking at here? Count will remain 0 because I haven't pushed up. I haven't pushed count yet. 1 and 2, 3, 3 and 1, 0. Oh. Right, because it does 0 first, figures it out. Then adds to the count. I need to run a counter to see. I need to check if what's it called? I might need to double check and see if the length of this array remains above 0. Then I need to reset my. I need to reset my my problem so that it runs over the whole entire list of grid. If grid I j.length is greater than 0, right? So now that we have our max, what's here? Do we have max? Zero and 4, 0 and 3. Right, because it will add the maximum here, it will add the maximum here. Okay. Why don't I just do the same thing then? I might need a conditional, so we'll do this. So let r equal to this. So we'll have temp is equal to this. Temp.push max. Right? Oh, r.push. Temp.push max, right? And then we remove the thing. And then what do I need to do? I need to get this, once this whole thing is in here, I will do r.push temp, right? What does it not like here? Cannot find the name temp. The thing that's getting me is I will have to reiterate. I'll have to iterate over everything over and over and over again, right? In order for me to, because it does this grid here, it does this grid here, and then it does this grid here, right? So I need to get it. I need to whittle it down from 4 and 3, like from this down to 1 and 1. So how would I do that? I might need another loop, right? So we might have to throw this whole thing into an existing loop, right? Which will be 1. So for let I equal to 0, I is less than 1, and then I plus plus. I might have to triple nest this loop. We'll see. But I think we might have it figured out. So if I'm doing this all once, really, I need to move this into here. But I will need I, J, and K because otherwise I will have issues with my code. What's happening here? Paste this here. No. I want to nest this loop. Paste this here. This one will move in. Move this in here and this in here. Okay, this is a little bit easier to see, right? K. I'll say K here, and K plus plus, right? Just for the outer loop. So now we've done grid.length instead of 1. Okay. So because what we'll have to do is we'll have to iterate over this time and time and time again. We'll set this to I is equal to 0 at the end here. Maybe not, right? Because I need to just keep running this through as long as the internal numbers are not empty. So we'll do temp is equal to this. Now I'm starting to lose my train of thought because how do I apply this? Once we have a quick reset, right? We have iterated, we have stepped into our first loop, right? We have set up a temporary variable which will help us store over the first whole iteration of the grid the maximum numbers. Then we need to go over the whole grid, and each time we go over the whole grid we are going to step into each element, right? So that's why we will go over the whole grid again. Max is going to be the number of each one. Iterate over the individual rows, and we're going to temp.push max And let's try and do this and see what happens. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 3, and 1, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 1, 3, and 1, and then 1 and 1. Okay. Cool. But I want it to ask what the maximum here is. So I need to push these numbers into temp.push max. And I want to see temp. 4, 4, and 3, right? And then we'll take this number, because see, look, 2 and 3, 2 and 3, it resets here. So it's doing what I want it to do. I don't want count outside at this point. I don't want count here. Count is going to throw me off. So let's just do, once we have a full array, right? Before it resets, when does it reset? When it is outside of this loop here. R.push the spread math.max of temp. Number is not assignable to the parameter of type number. This is an array of numbers, first of all. Okay. So temp now has these two in here before it resets the whole thing. Right? And my spread operator was in the wrong spot. That's why it doesn't like it. So now I kind of want to see here console.log array. Two and 3, 4 and 3. Okay, but we're missing one last iteration, which is 1, right? I don't need count here anymore. So our grid is then reduced to this, and we have 4, right? And then we have 4 and 3, and then 1 and 1. 1 and 1 doesn't get added, even though they are both full arrays. Why do they not get added? Is it because a delete happens before? We don't do it. Okay. R.reduce. We're going to say previous value and current value. And it is going to be previous value plus current value. And we're going to start at 0. Maybe it just, my console logs are basically, yeah. So it doesn't run over the last case. So why does it not run over the last case? Right? Case 0. So when does it not run over the last case? Why does it break, right? 1 and 2. When does it step out of that inside? Grid I.length J++. No, so it must be in here. For I is equal to 0, I is less than grid.length. So on our last iteration, when we have 1 and 1, right? So what do we have? Now I is 0, and the length of I is 1. Max is 0, and when we're inside, we haven't reset our array yet. Comma K. Let's see. 0 to 1. And what's my grid length? Less than or equal to, maybe, grid length then. Okay. It works for this. It works for this. How about this? Okay, so we got a wrong answer somewhere. We use a test case as an input. Okay. But essentially, 58, 42, 8, 75, and 28, 35, 21, 13, 21, 72. And we'll run this. We are expecting 216, but got 175, right? So what do we have here? So 75 is the first number, and that gets put in here, and it's got removed, right? And what are we console logging here? This is array and K. And it's okay. Grid I, temp, max, grid, temp, and max. And I'll say that this is first log, second log. And this way we'll be able to see it a little bit easier. Look at this. So we get here, and we have 75 and 72. It finds 75, and it does the second log. K is 0, right? It iterates over it again. And the number here is 58. And the number here is 35, 78, 75, and 58, right? I see. So my issue here is with this counter out here. I can change this to a do while loop. Do while. Hopefully this works. Grid I j dot length is greater than 0. Cannot find the name I. Well, we can try while grid.length is greater than 0, but this might be a never-ending loop. right? Because technically, while these are empty, it's still an array with a length, right? Because if it was empty array with two empty arrays in it, it would still have a length of 1 technically, length of 2. Output limit exceeded. Yeah, see, like it still does that, right? Four, three, one. It just keeps going because this has a length of 2. So why can't I use I here? Maybe I can just do a random code. Okay, we'll just do this. We'll go back to our original triple loop direction, right? Oh, Control Y. First log and second log, we'll keep those. But here, if grid I will have to be inside of the loop where the I is declared. If grid I dot length is greater than 0, right? K equals 0. And we're just gonna have to keep doing that until okay. So let's try and clean up our code and see if we can get an answer. Actually, submit this. $31 out of 55 test cases passed. Okay. Maybe it might be due to my logs. Let's try and remove our my logs. And we'll see what happens here. Do I need count? I don't have a count. I don't need count. So we're going to try and clean up our code and see if we can get this to work. Nice. We did it. Surprisingly enough, these numbers mean nothing. We used up a lot of memory. And it took us about 40 minutes since our first submission. So thank you very much. Let me see if I can go over this answer with you and tell you what I did. We're going to go over a couple of solutions, see how we can improve on it. But essentially what I did was I used a triple nested loop. This is a very brute force method. It is not a method I would recommend typically, but since this is our first pass around, and we're not really familiar with the algorithm just yet, it works, really, right? The whole point of this is that I'm trying to learn alongside you. Hopefully you have picked up something today. We started off with going over our loop, right? The question required that we go over our loop time and time and time again. The reason being, it's because we needed to, like, if we had just, like, let this run its course, it will iterate over the whole grid length once and stop. However, like, if we just use, I think, one loop, like if we just use this here, I wouldn't have been able to like use a temporary variable for each time it ran over the entire grid length, shortened the array, and then tried to do it again. So that's why I specified this here, if grid I.length is greater than 0, because I was unable to find out how to figure out the length of each array on the inside without really like resetting the loop from within. But But essentially what we do is we go over the length of the loop. We set a temporary length of array. It will go over each array. We will determine the maximum. So we have set the maximum to 0, and then we go in. We determine here. Look at this. Is grid I dot we'll iterate the loop like 1, 2, and 4, and we'll figure out what max is. So math.max, it will always run a check between two different numbers. So the first time around, max is 0 and grid ij is 1. So max now is set to 1. The next time it loops, right, max is 1 and grid ij is 2. So now max is set to 2. And then, you know, it will do the same thing, but now max is 4 and math.max, you know, is either 2 or 4, and max is now 4. We push that into our temporary array. We take it out of our old array, right? Because we need the index of max, because if I set grid I max, what it will do is the first loop, the first time I is 0, it will be grid 0, 4, which doesn't exist in this array because this array length is only really 3, but its longest index or its highest index is 2. So grid I of 4, right, doesn't exist. So that's why we need to use the index of method. And we are going to delete it for 1. We're going to delete one element. Now, if the length of the grid is still not 0, right, we need to reset this whole thing, because the way that loops work is that once this internal loop is done, we are going to iterate over this again. And since we are iterating over like the original grid length, so when it starts at k is equal to 0, the next time it starts, it's going to start at k equals to 1. So we are no longer going to take a look at 1, 2, and 4. We are going to start at 3, 3, and 1, which is why I've reset my grid to start up at 0 again, because I need to double check and see what 1, 2, and 4 are saying, right? Like I need to double check, like I need to find 2 the next time, and then I need to find 1 the time after that. And then because we are popping this all into like we're just popping arrays of arrays into my like array variable, I need to take those maximum values, add them together, and since we are returning a number, that's why I'm using a reduce method. What is this time complexity? You're looking at least at an n cube time complexity because of the triple for loops, right? Each loop, every time it has to run a check, even though this check is a constant check, since it's comparing two variables, like it will add more to our computation time. Since we're splicing, we're adding more to our computation time. Since we're pushing, we're adding more to our computation time, right? Our like capacity and like space and time capacities are going to be used up a lot. So let's compare it with a couple of solutions. I'm going to compare it, since I'm working in JavaScript, with a couple of other JavaScript solutions. Look at that, 25. It doesn't look like it is quite great. It's a short JavaScript solution, but let's see what they say here. And once we go over this, I'll call the video there. And I appreciate you watching along, and I hope you learned something. So what they did was they did for each, they sorted the row. Smart. Okay. So this is what they're saying here, is that if we care about the maximum value in each like subarray, which is the row of the grid, then we should just sort it. But sorting typically sometimes adds a lot of length or a lot of like time to our problem. But since we only care about maximums, we can start like working our way backwards. What this person did was they did a minus b, so they did this in ascending order. And while grid 0.length, so while again they were checking on the first element to make sure that at least there was something, they had a temporary variable, and then they would push the row, they would push the element in there and remove it from the row, since that's what they call it up here. Yeah, low row of grid. And then they summed it in a similar fashion. It's a much better solution than I did. It's much cleaner, it's easier to read. Next time I'll try to incorporate a while loop and see how I can come across that. But it's another time for refactoring code. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you learned something today. This was problem 2500, delete the greatest value in each row. And yeah, I'm going to push this offline, and I'm going to see you guys at my next video. Thank you very much for joining, and have a good one.